Hey, St. Paul, we're back this week. Sorry that we missed a week of what we started 2 weeks ago, but there are just lots of things with schedule. So we're happy to be back this week to talk a little bit about something going on in St. Paul's ministry this week. So this past weekend, Pastor Hopkins and I and a bunch of other guys from St. Paul were able to go to the men's retreat up at Camp Arcadia. So I'd like to just kind of check in on a few things that we learned there and the blessing that was to us and the group that was there. And obviously looking forward to another retreat next fall. This fall, we were able to hear from Dr. Andy Root, who was our speaker, and he talked about the secular and how we today in the United States, in our context, experience secular very different than the world looked 500 years ago, and then 300 years ago, and 100 years ago. It looks different for us today. So how do we view the world, and how do we interact with people, including ourselves, in this context of understanding what is secular, what is sacred, how do those two meet, and how is God at work in the world around us? And so I took a lot away from that conversation. I found it a very fascinating conversation. I know all the guys did too. We were engrossed. Dr. Root's a great speaker, so we love that. I would say at the end, I felt like I was missing kind of a takeaway. And I talked to a few people who were missing that too. Of how do I take the understanding of where we're at today in modern society, in this secular world, how do I meet people in their thinking and understanding of how God is at work, or just how we experience mystery or the divine, whatever it is, how do I meet people with the gospel in our world today? And I talked to Pastor Hopkins about this question, and he said, I think I have an answer. So that's what we're going to bring to you today.
So the answer. I really loved what Andy Root brought for us, and I think he told a story there at the end, which was about a woman who lost her husband like suddenly, and where she gets ministered to in his story is from a cabbie that just unexpectedly showed up at the morgue with a hand on her shoulder and a bottle of water in order to minister to her like in that moment. And I think actually that story is our answer. It's just not so obvious. So like Andy Root explores this stuff. It's a book called Evangelism in an Age of Despair. It's actually on our website, one of the small group resources, because I really love the book as I've worked through it. And essentially the short answer is, at least Root thinks, and I think Luther does too, that our best place to meet people in a secular age is in sorrow, in grief, in like the most difficult challenges of life, when we're weak, when we're vulnerable. That's when God shows up and God meets us. I mean, the Psalms speak, one of my favorite verses, especially in the last few weeks, from there is, the Lord is close, is near to the brokenhearted, and saves the crushed in spirit. I think that kind of embodies both what Root was driving towards and what I think actually just as Lutherans, this is what we teach in the theology of the cross. At kind of the lowest moments of life, that's when God shows up, and that he calls us to do the same thing, to show up for people in their sorrow, when they've lost loved ones, when they're struggling, and to bring for them the love of God in our presence, in our words. Like that's really, I think, the solution. I don't know, what do you think of that?
That helps. I think that's a good way to apply everything that we talked about. So that brings to mind for me, when Jesus comes to his disciples, he says, I've come that you may have peace. In this world you have trouble. Take heart. I've overcome the world, right? And so those times of trouble, despair, grief, sorrow, pain are going to happen. And often that's when we ask questions of, what is God doing in the midst of this? Or how am I going to get through this, right?
Yeah.
And we have answers, because Jesus overcomes all things that are trouble in our lives, in the world. And so that's an opportunity to give an answer to difficult questions in the midst of the sorrow, to say, well, this is what I experienced through the work of Jesus for me. He overcame all trouble through his death and resurrection. And I can look forward to a life of the world to come, his making all things new. That's right. That's what I cling to.
And let me share with you the way that I've experienced how Jesus has met me in these moments.
Yeah.
Right? I can testify to God's work in my own life in the life of my family as I speak to you. I think in terms of thinking of like next steps for our people here, I mean, that's one of, I think, our goals with all of our kind of small group, our community groups,
Yeah.
is to be able to live life with each other, right? And
Yep.
if we're living life with each other, we will inevitably, sorrow is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Difficulties, we're going to end up being vulnerable and have those opportunities where God shows up and we can simply walk with each other
Yeah.
and share that good news of Jesus.
That's what we do with St. Paul. That's our desire, that we,
Right.
we do that as a community, as a body of Christ working together.
Absolutely.
Of course.
And if you're interested in learning more about that, again, that book is his Evangelism in an Age of Despair by Andrew Root is on our website. Kind of reference that book. Suggestion for maybe a small group study.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Great to see you today. God's peace.